Hello everyone, hope you are doing well. Myself Brajendra Tripathi and my colleagues Bhumika, Alpas, Stanzin and Akash will be giving an overview about how the incidents have happened with Great Admiral Christopher Columbus and his colleagues while their discoveries in the new lands of America, Hispaniola and Caribbean. First of all, Bhumika will be giving the overview of the third voyage of Columbus.
I am Bhumika and I will be covering the third voyage of Columbus. Now before moving on to the third voyage, I want to give you a brief description about Columbus. Christopher Columbus was an Italian explorer and navigator from the Republic of Genoa who completed 4 voyages across Atlantic in the year 1492, 1493, 1498 and 1502. Now here the question arises, why the European explored new land? What was the main reason behind this? Obviously, the 3 major reasons are religion, spread and glory. During 15th and 16th centuries, leaders of several European nations sponsored expeditions in hope that Europeans would find a great wealth and vast undiscovered land. The first voyage of Columbus led to the discovery of Americas, sparkling colonization and exchange between the Old and New World. The second voyage established colonies in Caribbean, initiating European settlement and exploring the indigenous people and resources. The third voyage of Columbus in 1498 was funded by the Spanish crown. Unlike his previous voyages, the third expedition aimed to explore the far south, leading to the lucrative trade markets of Asia. On 30th May 1498, he departed from the port of San Lunar in Spain with a fleet of 6 ships. Their first stop was the island of Puerto Santo and Madeira. From here, the ships sailed south to the Canary Island, reaching their shores on 19 June. Here, the fleet split up with 3 ships sailing directly to Hispaniola. The remaining 3 ships sailed under the Columbus command down to Cape Verde with a goal of exploring the region farther south from the Hispaniola. On 4 July, the 3 ships left again to explore new land, but encountered the doldrums. The doldrums are what sailors call intertropical convergence zone. This is the weather phenomena which is marked by monotonous windless weather which occurs near equator. Because at that time, wind was the primary source of propulsion for ships. Being in the doldrums can cause fleet to stuck down for days while exhausting food supplies and drinking water for the crew. That is what Columbus and his crew members encountered. Having been able to travel 120 leagues in 9 days, for reference, the distance from Cape Verde to the island of Dominica is 922 leagues, but their luck improved and the winds picked up by 22nd July.
Hello friends, I am Alpas. Moving forward, I will provide update on the subsequent developments that occurred following the discussed voyage. The story begins with on July 31st, Columbus sighted an island with 3 prominent hills, leading him to rename this island after the Holy Trinity as Trinidad. There, the crew was able to procure more fresh water, and the next day on 1st August, Columbus and his crew sailed over to the mouth of Orinoco River in what is today called Venezuela. They did not disembark from their ship but made observations about the topography of the land as well as the sheer volume of water that was being sent into the ocean from the Orinoco River. These observations led them to accurately believe that the island they saw was a continent and not just another island. However, he still retained the belief that this was part of Asia. From August 2nd to August 12th, he continued sailing in the Gulf of Paria. During this time, he encountered many tribes from whom he received various items, including pearls, maize, wine, and fresh water. From here, he sailed to the island of Margarita, reaching there on August 14th. By then, Columbus was in poor health and determined to head back to Hispaniola. He reached there 5 years later on August 19 to find that his brother Bartholomew had abandoned the settlement at La Isabela and moved the headquarters to San Domingo. Furthermore, the Spanish settlers were in rebellion against the rule of Columbus and his brothers. They accused him for misleading them with false promises of gold and riches, which were not to be found on Hispaniola. Additionally, the clergy were enraged at Columbus' attempts to profit from the enslavement and sale of native people, considering their mission of converting them to Christianity. Hearing these reports on May 21, 1499, the monarch assigned Francisco de Bobadilla as judge for the affairs being conducted on the island of Hispaniola. The following year, in June, Bobadilla sailed to Hispaniola to relieve Columbus of his position and powers and investigate the accusations against him. Within days of his arrival on August 23rd, Bobadilla arrested Columbus' brother Christopher Bartholomew, imprisoned him, and seized his personal properties on the charges of being rebellious subjects of the Spanish crown. In early October 1500, the three brothers were put on the ship to Spain to face trial for the accusations levied against them. They arrived in Cadiz on October 30, 1500, bringing the third voyage of Columbus to an end.
Hello everyone, my name is Stanzin Dolma and today I am here to talk about Columbus's fourth voyage, specifically letters written by Christopher Columbus, the Viceroy and the Admiral of the Indies, to the King and Queen of Spain. Columbus wrote to the King and Queen explaining that he sailed quickly from Cadiz to the Canary Islands and then to the Indies, planning to go to Jamaica. Bad weather plagued Columbus's journey since Dominica. Arriving in Hispaniola, he requested a new ship due to one being unfit to sail. Despite being advised not to stop, he did so in order to send letters. His crew feared for their lives and the loss of discovered land, leaving them feeling doomed. Frustratingly, Columbus couldn't seek shelter as he had worked so hard in order to claim these lands for Spain. Columbus endured a harrowing storm that lasted 88 days, damaging their ships and causing sickness among the crew. His son, aged 13, showed remarkable courage. Despite falling ill himself, Columbus continued to lead the expedition. He lamented the lack of recognition for his 20 years of service and worried about his son's future. Upon reaching Cariay, Columbus learned of gold-rich lands in Kiamba and Veragua. He set out to explore, guided by Indians who shared information about the region. Columbus's expedition, initially scheduled to depart later, faced adverse weather and set sail earlier. Despite challenges, Columbus remained hopeful about the potential riches and noble goals of his voyage. Columbus faced numerous challenges at sea, enduring fierce storms and treacherous currents. Despite attempts to explore, his ships suffered heavy damage and many crew members fell ill. Upon reaching Veragua, they discovered gold fields, but tensions with the local chief escalated, leading to attacks on Columbus's crew. By April, his ships were severely damaged by worms, and a crew sent for supplies was attacked by Indians. Alone and feverish on the coast, Columbus called out for help but received none. Despite setbacks and ship damage, Columbus pressed on, facing storms and treacherous seas. He had a comforting vision, urging him to trust in God's plan. Setting sail on Easter Monday with 2 damaged ships, he endured more storms and dangers, eventually reaching Mago near Cathay. Continuing towards Hispaniola, he faced further challenges, finally arriving in Jamaica by the end of June. Throughout, Columbus and his crew worked tirelessly to keep the ships afloat amidst constant setbacks. Despite instructions not to go, Columbus requested aid to return from Jamaica to Hispaniola. He reflected on his voyage's challenges, including being forced off course by storms and illness. He encountered indigenous people, including magicians and 2 girls with magic powders. Columbus observed unique animals and artworks, remaining determined to explore and document his discoveries in the Indies. Columbus reported encountering tribes who believed they were bewitched and practiced cannibalism. He noted the presence of copper mines and described the people's clothing and crafts. Despite hardships, he emphasized the potential, wealth, and strategic importance of lands he explored. Columbus expressed frustration at being mistreated upon his return to Spain and requested redress for the injustices he suffered. He concluded by expressing his devotion to the Catholic faith and desire to embark on a pilgrimage if he were to return from his current predicament.
Hello again. I will be giving about how the companion of Columbus, Diego Mendes, have explained about his voyages to the islands of Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica, etc. Basically, Diego Mendes was a resident of the Santo Domingo city where the majestic court was there. Let me explain you why Diego Mendes is important. First of all, he was a very brave man, and let me explain you why. From the incidents of the fourth voyage, which he has described, we get to know that he was the companion of Columbus in all the dangers of the ocean and of the islands where the Indian tribals were always ready to attack Columbus and his ships. So Diego was a strategist. What he did was, he visited the islands directly and made a pact with the tribal leaders called Sasik in local language, which means the tribal heads. Again, he tamed the Sasiks and made them amendable and made a treaty with them so that the Sasiks and the Indians, the tribals, will supply Columbus, his ship, his men with materials like food items, clothes in return of some items like bell, some metal items, and etc., which were new to the island people. Again, I will be discussing about how Diego was courageous. He describes an incident where Columbus wanted to leave the Hispaniola island and go further to Santo Domingo, but his men were not much courageous except Diego, and he liked Diego very much. Diego made a plan, and if you will be astonishing to hear that on a small canoe boat, he was successful in countering the violent currents of the Hispaniola Sea, I mean the Caribbean Sea, and was successful in landing at Cape San Miguel in Cuba. At Cape San Miguel, due to the efforts of Diego, he was able to arrange some new ships with some new provisions that he collected from the local people, the Sasiks, the tribals of the Hispaniola and Cuba, that he was able to provide Columbus and his men a way to go back to the Castile city from where they have started. But before conclusion, let me also explain about how Diego Mendes worked. He visited the islands of the locals. He communicated with them. He used to pacify them with some supernatural powers which seemed to be, and it is very funny to describe how he pacified a Sasik by cutting the hairs of his colleague, and they thought that it was a very magical power. Similarly, Columbus and his men in their voyage used very much spirituality too to get some concessions from the islanders. Like when Diego was away from Columbus in 1 year, Columbus used to pacify the Sasiks by telling them that Columbus and his men were sent by God to their islands. Means you can think. And when the Sasiks rebelled that they were not providing the food items, then Columbus said to them that don't do these things because God will become angry. So Diego Mendes was an important part and parcel of the fourth voyage of Columbus. And finally, Diego recalls that when he reached Castile City, Columbus rewarded him with the magistrate ship of Santo Domingo, which was the largest city of Hispaniola. And in this way, we get to know a lot of information about how Columbus, being the admiral of the ship, used to send Diego on the new islands to discover new places. Apart from the fact that the tribals were always in the attacking mode, they were destroying their ships. They are not left with ships, no food items. But that man, Diego, was the kingpin in the whole voyage. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, this is Akash Verma. Previously, my colleague described the account by Diego Mendes. Now, I am going to discuss the biography named The Life of Admiral, written by his second son, Hernando Colon. The biography of Christopher Columbus provides useful point of the fourth voyage. In the final part of fourth voyage, the journey of Christopher Columbus from Jamaica to Santo Domingo or Hispaniola in 1504 was challenging for the crew and for himself. There were two types of difficulties Number one was in the journey they faced difficulties because of the oceanic currents, sea storms and winds, and number two was the political tension arose upon the arrival of Admiral at island on 13 August 1504. The governor of Saint Domingo offered hospitality but also duplicity by releasing a rebel leader and interfering in matters meant for the Catholic sovereign. Despite outward flattery, there was an underlying tension and manipulation in the action of governor towards Columbus. The contradiction between them was continued until the ship was refitted. On 12 September, 2 leagues of sail started beyond the river mouth. Now Voyage faced other challenges including breaking of mast and storm on 18 October encounter at the sea. Because of the ingenuity of the crew, especially of the Admiral, they were able to manage the hardship and construct the jury mast and sail until reaching the San Lucar de Barmeda. The Admiral then took some rest in Seville before departing for the court of Catholic king in May 1505. Following the death of Queen Isabella, Admiral expressed grief on the death of Queen Isabella as she had been a strong supporter of his endeavors. However, there was complex relationship between Christopher Columbus and King Ferdinand of Spain. Ferdinand's reception towards Admiral was rather cold. Despite pretending to offer him favor, the Admiral authority was at risk due to Ferdinand's desire to retain sole jurisdiction over the Indies. New circumstances such as the arrival of Philip I to assume the crown of Spain prevented further changes. Christopher Columbus ultimately passes away on 20th May 1506 in Valladolid, expressing devotion and surrendering his soul to the god.
So hereby, myself and my colleagues tried to describe how Columbus discovered new lands. It was a very difficult task. If we see in the context of the primitive technology of that age around 500 years ago, we can't imagine, but Columbus made it possible due to his colleagues, his courage and his dedication, which is itself example for today's world. Thank you everyone. I hope you liked our presentation.